So, hey folks, it's Mike Lanowski from the United States Wheelchair Rugby Association. I'm the secretary, and I'm joined here by Daniel Curtis, our current second vice president, and he is running for the same position this year at this year's AGM. And so we wanted to get Daniel here in his own words, explaining his history with the sport, the work he's done, and where he sees the direction of the league, where it needs to go. So Daniel, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, as always.
So how about you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you became involved in rugby and what your history is with the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to take a quick minute just to acknowledge and give a shout out to all of us just for making it through the past 18 months. I'd like to think that in general, we as quads or triple quad amps are pretty resilient and patient and creative and adaptable. But I can speak for myself when I say that it was pretty tough just to get through it. So regardless of where you're at, whether it was good for you or whether you're in a bad spot now, I just want to give us all kind of a pat on the back just for being here and making it. But yeah, to your question, I actually celebrated my 10-year a few weeks ago. So Memorial Day, broke my neck diving in my backyard pool. I'm in Austin, Texas, and at that time, the best place to go was Tier, which is in Houston. So about 3 weeks into my injury, maybe 4, we did our first outing with rec therapists, and we either went to, I think it was an Astros game first, and then my second outing was to the Tier Summer League. So that's when I was introduced to the sport, and then later that night or the next day, I watched volleyball in my my laptop in my hospital room. And I think just seeing that, I was cervical collar, TED hose, abdominal binder, power chair, probably as broken as I'll ever be, hopefully. And just seeing folks, with that level of injury pushing around, how can you not be instantly kind of like intrigued? So yeah, from there I came back to Austin, tried to go out to practice as a new injury on a very competitive team, probably in, February, March. So not a lot of traction because they're getting ready for, sectionals and nationals. But, it was good to see, like I said, folks with what I would consider less function, lapping me on the court and knowing that I had that much kind of room to grow and develop.
So tell me, you're currently in the position of second vice president. Tell me a little bit more of what you've been doing in that position and why you want to continue in that role.
Sure. So yeah, I'm in Austin. Previous VP2 was Emily Track. I think she had it for a couple of years, and she, kind of asked me if I'd be interested. Yeah, fundraising for the sport on a larger level, because we were kind of doing that on a local level in Austin. So I think she did a decent job in kind of picking me out. And yeah, certainly something that I was interested in. Not really something that I was incredibly good at, but I think over the years I've gotten better, especially on a local level. But yeah, just trying to get resources for us as a collective to expand and grow, to reach more people. I think that's the name of the game is just reaching more people, because a lot of folks out there they don't get to live in Austin. They might live in a small city, so they just don't, they don't get introduced to the sport early in an injury or at all in several instances. So I think it's our job as a board to kind of let it be known that we exist. And if there are folks out there that want to play, like help bring them into the league, because it does save lives at the end of the day. Like it does. So yeah, that's why I was intrigued.
Yeah. And you've done things like, You helped us get funding through the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation and
Craig Nielsen
grant.
Just hitting up our usual people and trying to find new people, and it's hard to niche, right? Like asking Melrose and Vesco and Eagle and Permobile and Coloplast and all the DMEs. That's kind of your usual kind of honeypot, if you will. Nielsen grant was great. The timing on it wasn't ideal because we got all this money right before the pandemic kicked in. But that money's going out to teams who need it. And hopefully that's something we can kind of repeat, or we can ask them again for funding for, other reasons. But yeah, I think just kind of helping, cover the costs and maybe have a little bit of money in the budget after the season's done is good, right? Sustainability is good, but what we really want is growth. And what we really want is, we want to be able to, pay somebody to do this work for us. And as a board, we want to oversee that and guide and direct that person or those people. So I think, it's one thing to stay afloat, but at the end of the day, what we want to do is grow, because that's how we're going to reach those people.
One of the things that people talk about is the league's relationship with USA Wheelchair Rugby and with Lakeshore. What is your feeling on that relationship, and how do we make it better?
Good question. Yeah, I feel like it's really solid. Mandy's on most of our calls. There's usually some kind of Lakeshore rep on all of our calls. I was fortunate enough to be the USWRA kind of rep at their selection camp. I guess it was, over 2 years ago now, when they picked the team for Tokyo. And that was an incredible experience. And I was able to kind of sit behind closed doors. And, there's no favoritism going on. Like, everything is above board. The system they use makes total sense. Like, they're in compliance with all the rules and regs. And that staff is just incredibly passionate about what they do. Like, they just love the sport and they want to win, So Lakeshore, I think I want a Lakeshore in Austin, and I wanted to hate Lakeshore when I first got there, but you can't. It's a beautiful facility. Yeah. I can't think of any other places in the nation that would kind of fit us. I'm sure they're out there, but that relationship is really solid for US Wheelchair Rugby, USA Wheelchair Rugby. Apologies. So yeah, how to make it, I feel like maybe it's better than it's ever been. I'm not really sure about the long history, but I feel like our communication is pretty solid. I feel like it's, we're there to ultimately kind of support them, and they in turn have done a really good job giving us guidance and direction as far as like where we need to be thinking about moving if we want that growth, and just for liability purposes, and as a more professional organization. So I think just keeping the communication going, and having it be kind of going both ways, it seems like it's going pretty well.
Taking that another step, how about with the IWRF? What's our relationship with those folks? How do we make that better?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like you and Dave and probably classifiers and refs probably have a deeper understanding. When I think about it, I kind of feel like the sport was what created here in North America, and really, the U.S. has kind of the most comprehensive league in the world. But ultimately, we kind of make our rules on a local and national level, for club ball. But at the end of the day, like when you want to compete on the world's biggest stage, you're playing by WR rules, and it's the global governing body. So I think, there's intricacies when it comes to like classification. Obviously, like no contact before the whistle is just a really good example of like a difference that we have playing club ball versus transitioning to international ball, and then classification exemptions, just the rewriting of the manual. Like I don't know a lot about that, but it seems like, we control what we control at the AGM. We make our rules. We have our constitution and bylaws. And how that aligns with IWRF is probably like a good thing to look at, in the years to come, because it's kind of a question of where, do we want our sport to do we want our sport to kind of be slightly different from what the rest of the world plays, or do we want to kind of align ourselves with that? And I think that's kind of a good question to ask membership. So that's kind of my, I know that there's communication going on there. I feel like most of that comes from the professionals at Lakeshore. They kind of keep us in the loop. So again, that's why that relationship is so important. But yeah, so it's kind of, I don't know if there's a pros and cons. No contact before this is kind of cool.
I like it
in general. But I get it, it's on the international stage. It just kind of changes the thing a little bit. So
yeah. Here's the tough question of the night. What's your home run scenario for the league? What do you want to see in the next 5 years that you think would make the most impact on the league?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I've touched on it. Essentially, as a board of directors, we should have an executive director who works for us, who, probably spends 30 to 50 hours a week in my dream world, doing everything from fundraising to staying in the loop with, US Wheelchair Rugby and IWRF and finding sponsors and doing marketing. And that position becomes 2 positions, becomes 3 positions. And consequently, we are able to, raise money. We're able to help sponsor, fund equipment, sponsor players, create new teams. Because it's not, right? Let's be real. Like, you want to play rugby? Cool. You got to buy a $5,000 chair. You got to buy a bunch of gloves. You got to buy a bunch of tape. You got to buy a bunch of tubes. You got to find a team locally. You got to drive to practice. You got to get both your chairs in and out of the car. Like, logistically, it's just not. I think we need more diversity in the sport. I think at the end of the day, outreach, like making it more attainable for anybody who wants to play, that fits the criteria to be able to play.
No, I think you're spot on, man. So that's all the questions I have for you for right now. I appreciate you taking time and talking with me. Thank you again, Daniel.
We'll chat again in a couple. Yeah. I'll see you next Saturday.
Sounds good.
And like I said, kudos to everybody just for watching. Appreciate you clicking the link.
Cool.